We are at the point where we're hitting our final panel for the conference, Navigating the Digital Frontier, Strategic Insights on Tech Investments. So the goal of this panel is to give you a peek into how technology leaders establish their priorities and evaluate, build, buy, partner strategies to achieve those goals. We have an amazing panel here for you today. We have Sree Sreedhararaj, Lynda Pak, he's the CTO of IPSY, Lynda Pak, Divisional CIO, Global Brands Functions at the Estée Lauder Company, Michelle Pacynski, VP of Innovation at Ulta Beauty, and it's moderated by Zia Wigder, Chief Content Officer at eMarketer. Please join me in welcoming the panel to the Converse Next stage.
All right, good morning, everyone, and thank you for staying through the final keynote of the morning. We are thrilled to be here. As you just heard, we've got an amazing panel coming up here today to talk about technology investments. So we're going to do super quick introduction here, and then we're going to dive right into the questions. So my name is Zia Wigder. I'm the Chief Content Officer at eMarketer. If you've ever seen the red and black charts posted on LinkedIn or in presentations, you will be familiar with us. And I'm going to start with Sree to do a quick introduction. And what I'm going to ask the panelists to do is to say a little bit about what they actually do in their role. What does it mean? Because we've got three very different titles represented here today. Sree.
Thank you. I'm Sree. I work at a place called IPSY. I'm the Chief Technology Officer in charge of most of the technology advancements, transformation, and experience of users in our overall platform. And what is IPSY? IPSY is world's one of the largest membership platform where we unite brands, thousands of brands, millions of customers, which we call members, and the creators, which are influencers and so on.
Hello, I'm Lynda Pak. I am Divisional CIO for our global brands and enterprise functions. So what does that mean? So if you're familiar with the Estée Lauder companies, you may know MAC, La Mer, The Ordinary, Clinique, Too Faced, Bobbi Brown. I can keep going. I know all 35 plus of them. So what my role is to bring technology enablement to our global brands, and that's on the brand side. And then on the function side, so if you think about how products get made, how we bring it to market, how we distribute and fulfill consumer and retail partner needs in their stores, their .com sites, that's also in scope for what I do. And anything related to data and analytics also falls within my realm.
Perfect. Thank you, Lynda. Michelle.
Awesome. Well, good morning, everybody. Michelle Pacynski, and I am the Vice President of Digital Innovation at Ulta Beauty. So for digital innovation, my role, I have a pretty cool role, but really the charge of digital innovation is to think about the future. Is to really think about what is the future of beauty, what's the future of retail. We think about kind of technologies, but we're not just doing tech for tech's sake. We are kind of looking at those technologies, and then we're trying to figure out what's really going to resonate in retail and beauty and with our guests. And it's awesome to be with two partners here. So I think it's kind of cool that you've got, beauty's kind of a cool category and fun to be with two amazing partners.
And we've worked together too.
Yes.
In the past, our companies have, so.
And I will say, it is a very beauty-centric panel, but we will do our best to ensure that the conversation does not just focus on skincare during the course of the next 30 minutes or so, but rather talk about technologies that will be applicable to all of you, depending on whatever category you happen to be in. So we're going to start with a quick answer question here, and that is, what is the technology out there today that excites you most? And the one caveat here is you can't say Gen AI.
Hey.
That's going to be tough. Yeah. Who should we start with?
We're going to start
I can go.
Yeah, Lynda.
Perfect.
All right, so the technology that I am extremely excited about is, I'm sorry, it's in the beauty space. It is inclusive beauty tech and bringing capabilities to those who have challenges, whether it's visual, whether it's hearing, to bring those capabilities to allow those individuals to be self-sufficient in terms of discovering beauty, putting on something that makes them beautiful. And if I can sneak a second one in there is the 3D holographic in real life capabilities. I'm excited about what that could mean in terms of packaging. So not beauty specific, but in terms of packaging, how we can optimally load up trucks better than standard TMS, for example, and packaging for products, any product, boxes to be more sustainable. And just imagine a product line, if there is some sort of breakdown, to be able to see it in 3D mode and to be able to look at and assess what the problem could potentially be. So an evolution of digital twin, but it's something that I'm extremely excited about. And those of you who have been to the Sphere, that's what I'm talking about. So imagine that in your day-to-day life.
Right.
Very cool. Thank you. Michelle.
Okay, I'm going to go with quantum computing. I am head of innovation, but what I think really is pretty cool about quantum computing, Sree and I were actually talking about it. Yep. Number one, the goal is that it's going to make things a lot faster, but I think really just generally for the world, it does have the potential of really being able to solve some of the most challenging kind of, problems that we have in science. And so you can think about health. Obviously, there are probably some really cool things that can be done from a formulation perspective. Yeah. But just the capability from, for health, I think is really interesting. And then maybe I'm sneaking in a second. Is that
everyone
maybe
breaking the rules here.
We're all breaking the rules.
Already.
Just like right, exactly. Is I do think maybe more relevant for the audience is heads-up displays. I think that's real. I think that it is coming, and I think it would be great if when guests entered all of our stores, if instead of them looking down, they actually were looking up, and then there was some relevant information that they could see, kind of as they're looking forward.
Love that.
Good. That's hard to go to the last, right?
I know.
I'm not going to talk about any sexy technologies out there. I'm super excited about edge computing. I think we, as many retailers and with physical stores in place, we've always encountered the stores being down, natural disasters. So like edge computing is going to resolve some of those situations where things are going to happen faster and more reliable ways. The second thing I'm excited about is sustainability tech, right? I don't think we talk a lot about it. At least the newer generation is a little bit thinking about it, but with the AI advancements and computational power which is required, I think we as technologists should really think about sustainability tech and start to invest in it. I'm personally invested in it, but I'm also excited about it.
Okay, great. Well, we've started very high level with some of these very aspirational technologies. We're now going to go super tactical and talk a little bit more about your roles within the organization, because there are a lot of different ways that you can develop a technology organization, whole team within the companies you work for. Where do you kind of sit? Like, what do your teams look like? We've got 3 very different titles with all of you. Would love to hear a little bit more about how you've put together your organizations. On this one, Michelle, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, cool. So digital innovation, we sit in our enterprise strategy group. And we do because the idea really is that, is to really to be able to have the most impact and influence on our long-term strategy. So it's kind of interesting, kind of in innovation, we do a little bit of a combination of 2 things. There's a strong pipeline of experimentation, but then we're also doing things that we think can really make like an impact today in the business. So for sure, when we're looking at the strategy or our annual business plan, which comes out of our enterprise strategy group, the innovation team, although we're looking forward, we're also looking at what are the things that we can do today that we can accelerate some of the things that are on that the annual business plan.
And can I ask you sort of which other teams do you work together with very closely?
We will work pretty closely with our consumer insights team, both strategy, consumer insights, because while we're doing quite a bit of trend analysis, I also should mention in digital innovation a couple of years ago, we started a corporate venture fund Prisma Ventures, and we did that so that we could really accelerate the things that we're doing in innovation. So we will invest in very early stage startups. And then when we're doing that, right, and we're trying to kind of identify what are the startups that are going to help us accelerate things, we'll not only do our own research, but we'll work with consumer insights and some teams in marketing to do, what's happening in the industry, what do the consumers want, Gen Z, I know we've heard a lot about things from the Z Suite, right, while we've been here today. So I would say, typically those are the teams that we're kind of partnering with is marketing, and strategy.
Okay, perfect. So that's one good blueprint for an innovation team. Sree, you were CTO at IPSY. What does your team look like?
So reporting to the CEO, the technology team is responsible for many different things, but primarily focused on technology advancements, the transformation, as I said about. The teams include user experience, user research, design teams. They take care of all of the experiences on the digital footprint. We have a technology excellence team who are focusing on adoption, change management, trainings, and all of that. And then we have the engineering focus teams who are primarily developing technologies which are very IP-centric to the company. And then we have operations team who are looking at information security, compliance, privacy, all of that aspect, fraud, risk, all of those encompassing. And then we have a small team of innovation who's also looking at like ad tech, martech space, looking at technologies which are out there rather than, because all of those requires a lot of partner integrations, right? So that looks at platforms which are out there, which have evolved in the current world with like composable nature, like where you can hook up and really transmit the information to all of the ad tech technologies which are out there. So we're looking at that too. Yeah.
Interesting. You mentioned ad tech and martech for that innovation team. Do they also look more broadly sort of at beauty tech, or are they really focused?
They do. Okay. Yeah, so they do look at beauty tech. We are a heavily digital-based company, so we look at technologies which are more digital experience-based and evaluate them and look at how do we include them into our technology ecosystem in a seamless fashion. Yeah.
Okay, and I'm going to ask you one more follow-up question, which is, who do you spend the most time with? Other than the CEO, you said you report directly to
so
them.
we have to work with a lot of teams within the organization. We have amazing merchandising team who looks at like thousands of different brands, bringing in those amazing assortments, curating those assortments to send it into these unique bags and personalized bags, which goes out to each of the members. We have membership and LCM team who looks at the communication, how to talk, when to communicate to the teams, how do we trigger certain messages to the teams and keep them engaged on our programs and everything. And we have the finance team looking at all the financials, and we have to work with them, which like any other technology organization will have to work on it with them to make sure that the business is growing and business is stable and sustainable and so on. We have also a separate team who's focusing on acquisition and marketing technologies. So we have to work with CMO organization to do that, all of those aspects as well.
Okay, great. And Lynda, you have a CIO title, which can mean a lot of different things. So within Estée Lauder, what does that look like?
Yes, so we report into the Global Chief Information Officer. And similar to what Sree mentioned in terms of the coverage, we are in every corner of our businesses, as you can imagine, including tech innovation. So it's a culmination of what's been covered so far in terms of scope, but one of the areas that I want to specifically call out is that we have technology leaders who are at the leadership table of our brands, regions, and functions, and so they're part of the roadmap development, determining how brand strategies or function strategies, supply chain strategies, for example, are going to evolve, how it's enabled by tech. And tech is becoming more and more injected into the conversation. And so those are driven by some of the conversations that my team have across the organization. So they will work very closely with members of the brand teams, marketing teams, education teams, consumer care, everything else. And then of course to a delivery team, working with the delivery team to deliver the specific capabilities to meet those business objectives.
Great. And we're going to stay tactical here for a minute, and building on what all of you have talked about in terms of new technologies and innovation. How do you actually roll those out in your organization? Because it's one thing to go through the vendor selection process, decide on a technology, you get the buy-in from your CFO, but then when it comes to educating teams across the organization about it, what does that look like very specifically? Like, that's a big task.
It is.
Lynda, I'm going to go back to you to start.
Yes. So our approach is slightly, there are aspects that are divergent and then similar approaches in terms of how we roll out. Of course, change management is at the heart of everything. So if we take brands, for example, a lot of the digital experiences are very consumer facing, right? How is our consumer going to engage with this experience to make their shopping experience as high touch, as luxurious as possible, as beautiful as possible. And so to bring that technology, we'll start to look at market pilots, right? But to introduce new innovative technology, it's not just, it's a free-for-all. It's got to meet the objectives of not just Estée Lauder in terms of what our mission is over the next 3 to 10 years, but it has to elevate our brand equity. And so it's very focused on, does this fit for our brand? And that is constantly something that we have to help filter through to make sure that that is the case. And to be able to help guide the adoption in the markets is something that my team is engaged in. Now, on the employee-facing side, so let's say supply chain, finance, we're typically going through, for example, major finance systems upgrades. And that is going to take the best practices in terms of how we implement, how we educate the end users, process education, of course, as well as technology education. All of that have to come together. And again, change management has to be at the center of all of that.
And I'm going to ask one follow-up question here. When you talk about education around process or technologies, what does that look like? Do you record videos that you then roll out to people to watch? Do you do a whole lot of one-on-one training? I'm sure it varies. I'm just curious how a company like Estée Lauder would think about, what are going to be some big rollouts?
Yes, it's going to be a mix of all of those things. So I know we weren't touching AI, for example, but we started out with real live training around Copilot. Right, as we started to roll a pilot out to our users. And then subsequently, after some of the basics, it will be more digital training, on our learning platforms. For the field, especially for those who are engaging with our consumers, the brand education, we're very, very thoughtful about how we educate those at the counters, in our stores, how we're working with our retail partners. So that is going to be predominantly live. And we do have brand education conferences to allow us to do that for certain brands. But it is very curated by brand and specific brand messages that we want to certainly convey. And then for net new implementations internally, so I'm going to keep going to consumer facing versus what we do for our employees, that we include education and change management as a key work stream for any new capability that we roll out. Enhancements will probably be more along the lines of a Zoom type of education. And we will also capture a lot of that in our learning system, right? So to digitize all of that. Standard, what do you do? What are some of the data and privacy education that we need to pass? We need to be certified every year. Those are done typically as computer-based or digital training that through recordings and interactive questions, but we're very thoughtful about how we bring that education to both those in the field as well as to our employees. And that's very important for us.
Okay. Either of you do things that are very different from what we've just heard?
I'd maybe just jump in and say that from an innovation perspective, maybe the one thing to think about is that you definitely need to have some form of an experimentation framework, kind of what is the hypothesis, what do you really want to learn. It's important to know when to stop an experiment, otherwise everybody kind of wants to succeed, and experiments can have a tendency then if you don't really have a defined end, they'll kind of go on forever. So it's okay, I like to tell my teams regularly in innovation, it's okay to stop because maybe people think of that as a failure, but really if you're stopping whether it works or doesn't work, there's a ton of things to be learned. So I think it's really super important to be thoughtful and to know when do you end because you've learned enough, and then you can take it kind of take it to the next step.
Yeah, you triggered a thought where we also do end consumer education. We do want to educate our consumers about skin care, hair care, scalp care as an extension of skin care. So we do offer a lot of end consumer education as well. That's coming through our websites, coming through our mobile experiences, and of course those out in the field as well. I think that's also very, very important across all of our beauty categories. For example, did you know you could layer on fragrances? Which is incredibly interesting for our consumers.
Great. And Sree, I'm actually going to ask a follow-up question to the one I asked before. As you're doing, rolling out the new technologies, how do you measure the effectiveness of them? Are there certain KPIs you use? Again, does it vary depending on the nature of it?
Yeah, it depends on why we are actually rolling out something, right? I think we have to have something which we are trying to solve with it, or something which we are trying to achieve, which is where I would say the only thing which I would add to what they have been talking about is innovation versus disruption, right? So innovation is usually evolved in a constrained environment. You're trying to do something which you couldn't do today, right? So that's where innovation breaks in. And then you have disruption, which is you're looking at a new value stream. You haven't done that before. Industry has not done that before. Competitors are not doing it before. But how do you step ahead of it in the curve and then do something different? So that's when we look at certain technologies which we need to bring in. And we have to first define the success as KPIs, or like, what do you call success? When do you say that this is achieved? Or when do you say that this is not going to be achieved? And that measurement in different angles, right? Sometimes it is non-functional in nature, which is like, things like how is it performing? How is it improving? Is it impacting our consumer experience overall from site experience, for example, as a matter of fact? And then you have certain business KPIs which you're looking at, like is it improving conversion? Is it improving experience in terms of the member experiences which we are offering to the people? Are they excited about this? How is the feedback coming in? What is our NPS? What is the CSAT? There are so many KPIs which goes into deciding whether that is successful or not. But then later on, we also need to look at like how is it maintainable, right? Because that's one thing which we usually don't look at. Once we roll out, it's just handed off to some maintenance team, and we don't look at how does it perform and is it improving year after year, because we need to optimize especially each of these products which are being rolled out. Yeah.
And how do you decide when to end a pilot? Let's say, or not the pilot, but the rollout altogether. You may decide that something simply isn't worth the investment. What does that look like?
Right. So I think that goes back to the KPIs. So if you have critical KPIs which you need to hit and look at how it is impacting versus the negative KPIs it is impacting. Like, for example, it is really working out from a conversion standpoint, but customer experience standpoint, it adds friction, then we need to decide and maybe regroup. So from my past, what we have usually done is we have steering committees with different stakeholders from different businesses come together to talk about, see, here is the pilot result, here are the KPIs which we see, here are the negative KPIs, and here are the positive KPIs. What do we want to do? So we, as a group, we take a decision whether to like shut it down or we continue and roll out, right? So.
I think the other thing, just to follow on to that, that's really important is that with technology, and kind of some of the experimentation, oftentimes, like what we find is that the technology works. Actually, the tech itself works, but, particularly in innovation, it could be something that is just that the guests aren't educated yet, they're not ready for that, and you learn that the technology works, and that what you need to do is actually really go back to more of an education plan and trying to get people aware of how, in fact, they can engage with something like that. So,
The last piece I would add is I think adoption is absolutely critical. The technology is going to work, but if you don't have the adoption as anticipated, you're not going to meet some of your KPIs because maybe someone in the store, there isn't the operational rigor to ensure that a technology is getting used and leveraged. So I think adoption is absolutely key. So we look to, come up with an adoption plan as we're starting to build the business case to ensure some of the commitments around adoption so that we could achieve those KPIs.
Right, because it might be just a matter of timing, right? You've learned something and then later on it will come around, so it's good to kind of keep that in a backlog that potentially you can, you've learned something and it's just a matter of timing.
And again, what does that kind of look like? If you put it on the back burner, what does the back burner look like? Do you have someone who continues to focus on it? How do you kind of keep something simmering in the background?
Like in innovation, right, we typically, we want to kind of build a pipeline of experimentation. So yes, we're looking forward, we're looking at net new things, but things that, like an example could be something like, even sort of like the real life avatars. We've dabbled around in some of them, and originally we kind of took a question and answer capability, and then we front ended it with kind of like a real looking avatar, if you will, and people really were like, well, maybe we'd prefer to just talk to a real person. We're not really quite ready for that. But I think then there's, we continue to look at the evolution of that, and we might then look at something that maybe we're not ready for it in the real world, but maybe in the virtual world and virtual spaces where a lot of people are engaging. We might then look at what does that look like? How do you engage with, different kinds of virtual people, digital twins, as Lynda mentioned, kind of in other places.
Okay. Now, this is a topic that was promised in our session description, so I want to make sure that we touch on it, which is the build, buy, partner, some combination thereof. What does that look like at your organizations? And here, Michelle, I'm going to have you kick us off on this one.
Okay, so for the most part, we're not unlike the rest of the enterprise. We'll deploy a hybrid approach, but I'm going to put kind of an innovation lens on this because it is a little bit different. We will build if we think that we really can create a competitive advantage. So if we think we've got IPs, something that really is differentiated, we will build. Now, again, this is, I'm speaking from an innovation perspective, we'll build. When we say buy, what we mean kind of from an innovation perspective is we will invest or acquire. Because effectively what we're thinking about when we say buy is, to us, we will work with Prisma Ventures. We'll identify startups that we might not lead around, but we're going to do a little bit of an investment in them so that we get early access to something that allows us to accelerate the development of something that's differentiated. So for us, again, I'm going to put my innovation hat on at Ulta Beauty, is, for the most part in innovation, we're always kind of building. We're either building directly or we're working with partners, and there's a form of buy, but then in that regard, we're kind of co-creating and building together.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would agree 100%. I think it's not the question of build versus buy has been there always, and it will be there until the end of the world. I think everybody will have that in mind, like what should we do? And it depends on the type of the company, as Michelle was saying, right? If there are specific IP which uniquely differentiate yourself, which you want to amplify, which you need to have an IP, 100%, I agree with her that it should be built in-house and with some certain skill set which need to be internally controlled. And at the same time, I do agree that based on your size of the company and whether you have an army behind you or not, right? You see, like for me personally, I see partners, and I wouldn't call them like vendors, right? Because that's the difference between a vendor and a partner, that for partners, we would love to partner with them, talk about strategy, what we want to do, rather than looking at like a focused problem which we are trying to solve. Like tell them that here is the problem which in front of us, and here is the 3-year plan or 5-year plan where we want to get to. Like how could you help us? And then that's how we work with them to create that. And I see that as a personal extension of a hand, right? Looking at the expansion of your technology landscape through partner ecosystem. And with the technology advancements right now out there with composable architectures in place, it's so easy now to really work with a partner to hook it up and really get that opportunity cost in front of you, right? Because we usually look at ROI after a certain point, but you also need to look at the opportunity cost or loss of so, right, in front of you. Yeah.
All right. So we have barely over a minute left, but I'm going to wrap us up with one final question, which I will ask you to answer very quickly. A controversial point of view that you have. What do you believe that you think others in the industry might not? And I'll let any of you jump in with this final.
I can talk about something which I spoke before, AI improvements.
Okay.
I think AI has advanced so much, and it is fast moving, super fast moving, not just in terms of computation, but also the hardware innovation which is happening. I think there is a lot of wastage which is right now in the industry, right, which goes back to the sustainability and eco-friendliness. So there is something which each company should think about, like everybody's looking at the positive side of the AI. As long as you look at optimizing the AI for specific use cases, you are targeting a specific thing, you could optimize how much of wastage and eco effect you will have in this. So it's very close and near to my heart, and that's one of the topics which I keep talking about, that I'm a big fan of AI, but at the same time, we should look at how AI is used and how are you looking at like more of strategy before you jump into just for the sake of using AI, let's not use the AI.
Yeah, and it does seem like there's no sort of single killer use case within retail. It seems
Absolutely.
like when you talk to
Right.
E-commerce professionals, they're using it in a variety of different ways. Parting thoughts, controversial perspectives.
Well, I love the fact that you brought up sustainability tech or sustainability in general. And it's not just to the CPG or retail industry. I think it's across the board. And I don't want to sound like put on a sustainability poster or anything like that. But I don't believe that companies are putting the focus, or there is as much of a commitment from the governments to drive more sustainability into our business operations. I believe that we are doing the right things and meeting specific targets that we need to meet, but I just don't think we're doing enough.
Okay.
And I maybe would just leave everybody with, and I don't know how controversial this is, but I really do think that, I think that we should all kind of think about our digital properties, our websites specifically, and I think they're kind of ripe for disruption. I think the way that they look, kind of just the navigation, we all kind of curate the navigation, and there's a place for that. But I think the experience and how people engage and look and search for products, I think there's going to be a fundamental, in the next couple of years, I think we will see really a fundamental change to the way that we, construct our websites, and we have our guests engage and understand how to learn, about the products and make buying decisions.
Okay, great. Well, what is not controversial is we could talk for another 2 hours on these topics, but our time is up, so I wanted to say thank you so much to all of our panelists. Really appreciate it, and thank you to all of you as well.